Spoiler warning. The following discussion will contain spoilers. We recommend checking out the movie first, then coming back to hang with us. But if you don't care about that, glad to have you here. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are The Real Movie Guys. It's our real sports series where we talk about some of your favorite sports movies you may or may not have seen. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Warrior. Warrior is about the youngest son of an alcoholic former boxer returns home where he's trained by his father to a competition in a mixed martial arts tournament, a path that puts a fighter on a collision course with his estranged older brother. John, there's not too many MMA movies out there, right? I would argue.
Not that many, no.
No.
There are some, but
All right, but there's not that many, right? Let's
very,
get that
very
clear.
few.
There's a lot of boxing movies.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Oversaturated boxing movies.
Yeah. No. So what I'm just driving at is there's not a lot of MMA movies. So I would say right off the bat, this is one of the best MMA movies out of the bunch. That's not a huge compliment, I feel like, because there's not that many. But this is definitely probably the best depiction of MMA we've seen in a movie, especially, to current year at this point.
Yeah.
I think this would be the first time we've taken MMA serious in a movie. Most MMA movies, I've come across. I do enjoy Never Back Down. It's a terrible, terrible movie, but it's fun for what it is. You know what I mean? Any of those other stupid mixed martial artist movies, Undisputed. Yeah, there's some garbage out there. Warrior, I feel like is the first true stab in the genre. To see if we can get a movie out of it. And I think overall it's pretty successful. The first thing we'll talk about before we even get into the characters and the movie, how did you, as an enthusiast of mixed martial arts yourself, how would you say it portrayed the sport overall in this movie?
I think overall it portrayed it in a positive way. Because you can see even just jumping into it, you can see in in the fights where they're in the tournament, how he's using certain moves that a lot of MMA people use when they're on their back and stuff, and getting into submissions and stuff.
Right.
It shows you how in MMA there's so many different styles of fighting, and how he's more of a wrestler instead of not like a striker. So he used what he knew to his advantage, which was trying to choke people out, getting submissions.
Right.
I felt like portrayed it showed you how much time and work actually goes into what these athletes do in their training.
Yeah, and I would say this movie came out essentially during around the MMA boom. I mean, MMA is popular now. I would argue it's maybe not as popular as it was. There was a point where MMA was really big, it was overtaking boxing at some point. It still kind of is, but that's a whole nother conversation for a different time. But this movie, I think, really exemplified what MMA could be. You had the tap out guys were in this movie. I always laugh when I see those guys. They were in this movie, holding this big. Again, it's kind of silly in concept when you really think about it. They're holding this big tournament all over the world to see who's the best fighter, and it's not really clear how you get into the tournament. It's a little weird, but I guess you can just kind of get in and do what you want.
I think it's funny that it's held in Atlantic City too.
Yeah, New Jersey held where we live, right? It held the world's largest MMA tournament from fighters all over the world. Yeah, okay, that's totally where that was going to be held. Again, like I said, that silliness aside, I think it's very true to the MMA sport. There was a lot of real life influence from what I understand with this movie. Joel Egerton, who plays Brendan, he was the character. His character's based off. I think there really was a teacher who was in a similar situation where he was an MMA fighter, and there was something where they wanted to fire him. I don't know the whole details. I don't know if you know more about that, but I know there was a true story that's loosely based on.
Yeah, it sounds familiar because I heard about it in the news or something one time. I remember coming across it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not more informed, but yeah, like I said, I know that's loosely based on. Again, not this whole story because I got some issues with that, but that part of the story is loosely based on some truth. So I think that helps ground that aspect. But yeah, overall, this is a really good win. No pun intended for MMA. This is a good, I hope we get more movies like this in the future with the sport. Since that, we're in 2020, this came out, 2011. I feel like it fizzled out, the interest in MMA style movies. It could come back, it's not over. There's still stories to tell, I think, in MMA. It hasn't achieved that level of legacy like boxing, which would probably be the number one competitor for MMA, especially in the cinematic universe as well as the real life sport. I think there's people in both camps against the two. I think boxing right now still has the better stories to tell, but who's to say? In the future, a couple of years down the road, maybe 10 years down the road from now, maybe there'll be MMA stories, competing with the Raging Bulls and the Rockies of the world. We can only hope, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well,
But
that's
yeah.
also the thing too. Like a lot about it right now with
Mm-hmm.
boxing being over MMA.
Mm-hmm.
I think MMA might be more popular, but
Yeah.
more people know like the boxing champions than they do MMA champions, really.
Right, right. No, and like
Which
I
I
said,
think is
it's
a
just such
big.
a
That's
legacy.
why.
It's a legacy, right? I mean, boxing has such a huge legacy. I don't know if MMA's really carved out that legacy yet. So I think that's part of it. It's not ingrained in the culture as much as boxing is, because God, boxing's been around. I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate a date right now, but boxing's since a time, since two men could put on gloves and hit each other. Boxing's been there. MMA is more recent and a change in the sport, but boxing's just so ingrained in the culture. I think that's why we have such an affinity for it.
Yeah.
But let's go into the performances. So we got three actors. I would say three standout actors in this movie. So we got Joel Edgerton, who plays Brendan Conlon. So he's a teacher, right? He's a teacher. They have no money. Essentially, his family, they're losing their house, so he's got to overcome the obstacles to win. He did a great job, though. I'm not going to give him too much crap for that. He played the role really well. Very relatable, very honest person. I can really appreciate that. The next character we go into, then you have Tom Hardy, the crazy character actor he is. Plays it pretty normal in this movie, besides being a buff monster. Um, he plays this pretty normal and straight. This is the first time I think I've heard Tom Hardy in a while. I mean, I've seen this movie before, but even recently, I very seldomly hear him use his own voice when he's not using crazy Bane voice or something in a movie. So that was a nice change, to see him just be himself essentially in a movie. He did a good job though. You can feel, he gets his emotions across. You can feel his conflict and heartache with what he's doing. His estranged relationship with their father, especially coming through. The other actor, of course, we have the legendary Nick Nolte, who does an amazing job as the father Paddy. He's great. I think he's really good. He's always. It's interesting because you hear throughout the movie he's listening to Moby Dick. I think he's listening to about chasing the white whale, and there's some symbolism with that whole thing. He's listening to his fishing stories, but he's the recovering alcoholic. He failed his family. Does a good job. Unfortunately, I could probably imagine Nick Nolte being that character in real life for some reason. So I don't know how that goes. You also have Jennifer Morrison, who's in this movie as well. If you want to get into another actor, she's famous from House. I don't know if you watched House pretty often, but she was in House. She was also in Once Upon a Time, was her big thing. She plays Joel Edgerton's wife. She was serviceable. I wouldn't say anything special. And then our special guest of this movie is the one and only Kurt Angle.
That's right. The Olympic gold
Who
medalist.
plays a Russian.
That's right.
Okay, sure.
It was so weird though.
It
Like
was so weird.
the first time that they show him, and you're like, wait, they chose an Olympic gold medalist from America who's always seems like he's so all about America,
Right.
and they chose him to play a Russian guy. It just seemed kind of like a little bit weird.
Yeah, it was a little strange. I don't know about the casting of his
Strange
character.
choices.
I guess he was fine. He didn't really do anything, but whatever. He's in the movie. Kurt Angle's in the movie for our wrestling fans out there. You know who he is. So other things I like about this movie. I do like the whole family triangle story that they're telling here. The brother versus father versus everybody. I really do like that story, and I think it's really well done for the most part in this movie. Again, Nick Nolte, you do feel bad for him. He's a sympathetic character at times, and that's mostly because of his acting, partially because of the story. You realize, he messed up and he was a bad guy, but he really is trying to make it better with his sons, and his sons just want no part of him whatsoever. Tom Hardy just wants to use him, and Joel Edgerton just wants him to stay the hell away from him. And that relationship is probably, unfortunately, pretty realistic, which adds to the human story of this movie, which I think a lot of people can deal with, especially when people are estranged from their family. I think that adds a lot of realism to it, especially like Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. Like, they can stand each other to an extent, but Joel wants to have Tom Hardy in his life, but Tom Hardy wants like no part of anybody. He's kind of isolated himself from everybody, and just that build up to that final fight at the end of the movie. I think it was really well done for me. It actually kept me really, really engaged for the most part.
Well, it was also weird though too. Like, you never ever saw like him and his dad though training though.
I mean,
Like
you
saw,
did. There was like brief
saw Tom
glimpses.
Hardy like training when he first started in there.
Yeah.
Started, and when he went in the ring and sparred with the guy, you saw that. But then I feel like after like he wanted his dad to become his coach, it wasn't like I didn't see any of that in it.
Yeah, which is weird for a sports movie, right? Usually you're used to the training montage. We got like a brief, like, was it 5 minutes, if that? I would say there was a brief little montage of them training. So I mean, it was inferred. I guess it wasn't the focus, so they wanted to keep the pace, which is another thing I really do appreciate in this movie. It's quick pace. This movie never really felt slow to me. This is a long movie though. It's like 2 hours 20 minutes long. I don't feel like it was slow though. Oddly enough, I think the quick pace helps it overcome to an extent some of a lot of cliches, which we'll get into, that are used in this movie. But again, I think the quick pace helps that and kept me, for the most part, engaged in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, overall though, like I said, it was pretty well done for the most part. I would say the acting was competent. If anything, the acting, I think, is probably the best compliment I could give this movie. Just the actors involved helped elevate the cliche material, which is why I want to get into the negatives. This movie's cliche after cliche after cliche after cliche after cliche. It was so many, I think I lost count of how many there are. My favorite one that I really want to talk about is the wife, right? The wife who can't watch, but she has to watch. And then at the end of the movie, she's at the actual fight. Oh, she's actually there. Like, come on, guys. Like seriously, the whole underdog cliche. I do like it. I just didn't think they added anything to it. I mean, unfortunately, I think just all these cliches added to one of my biggest gripe with this movie was Tom Hardy. Again, I can't praise him enough as an actor, but his story and his, like, I guess you could argue his power level. I feel like we're watching an anime. His power level was off the charts for some reason, and I don't understand why. I don't know if you feel that way, John. I think Tom Hardy, throughout this whole movie, Tom Hardy's built up to be this monster. He punches a guy once and just walks out of the ring, which is really cool. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a really badass, cool thing.
I mean, he is Bane.
But it's ridiculous, right? In this movie, it's just ridiculous. And it's funny because I actually watched this movie twice because I was like, I want to see if I missed something. I watched it the second time. They go into Tom Hardy's background. He was just like an amateur wrestler. I mean, he's a Marine, so you're saying he was an amateur wrestler, a really good amateur wrestler, right? And then he went to the Marines, he became a soldier, and he suddenly became like final level boss, master of the universe. Just punches every guy he can just punch out and walk away.
Well, I think that also though comes from like the backstory of him where he saved all those guys.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
He ripped away.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Let's talk about that story. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I love America. I get it. At first, the story's so convoluted and crazy. At first, you think he's a military hero because he ripped a tank open to save people. And then you find out he was like dodging the military because his friend died. And then he wants to help his friend's family by winning money to give to her. It's just too much. It's just I'm sorry. It's just so stupid and convoluted. Like, you're just trying to toy with our emotions about Tom Hardy. Just give me something more straight and simple. I didn't need all those weird twists and turns in it. It wasn't interesting.
It also seemed like he was hooking up with that dude's wife too.
I don't even know if it was that. I think he was
Like,
just no. I don't think so. No, I disagree. I don't think it was that. I think he's just he promised a friend that he's going to take care of his wife, and he's going to do that. It's just he's
uh-huh.
ridiculous. He's over the top.
Tired cliche right there.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. You're adding to the cliches, right? So this whole movie, though, you're told Tom. Okay, so let's take all that into perspective, right? So he's a big monster. You're told throughout the movie he's the strongest man, like essentially in the world. Meanwhile, you have Joel Edgerton in this movie, who's like struggling every fight to get to the end. He fights Kurt Angle, who's the world champion in this movie. He like barely beats him. He's having like a struggle to fight that guy. Then he suddenly gets to Tom Hardy, his brother, and they have the brother versus brother face off at the end of the movie. Tom Hardy's like a little wimp. Like, what
Well, see,
happened?
before we even get to that whole part too,
Yeah,
I just want to say the fact that they had the wrestler go up against the Kurt Angle character,
yeah.
to me, the way that they made that match
Mm-hmm.
or the fight was so bad. They should have done where they did the other brother against the Kurt Angle
I
character. I feel like
agree.
that would have been a way better fight,
Right,
and that would have made the ending of the next match make more sense because then he would have had like a harder fight.
right.
The fact that they go into the main event
Mm-hmm.
of the whole thing, brother versus brother, it all sells money, it all sells stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact was too that he didn't even they had like this whole thing where they like the climax was supposed to be right there, brother versus brother,
Right. That's the
huge
story I
fight,
wanted. Right.
and then their fight is so lackluster. It's just kind of like
It happens and it's over.
yeah. Then it's almost like I watched this movie knowing to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
You could have like done a better display. Like I didn't feel like
But
that fight was that great.
right, and then like I said, the Tom Hardy is a monster throughout the whole movie, and then suddenly he's getting beat up by his brother, who's been struggling the whole movie. Does that? Not, and I get you could have said, oh, maybe he's just a little emotional in this fight, and yada. He's been dealing with a lot. No, he's just been knocking people out with one punch, and suddenly he's having a hard time fighting somebody. I just wasn't buying that at the end. I mean, maybe if they had Tom Hardy get injured, right? Then I mean, he like Joel Edgerton breaks his arm or dislocates his. Was he dislocate his shoulder? I think in the movie or whatever he does, he breaks his arm, dislocates it, whatever towards the end of the fight. But before that, if he was injured in fighting, then I'd be like, all right, maybe I can understand the
Yeah,
the difference in power level there. But
but
it's just
then
like no, not at all.
then if you're gonna do that too,
Yeah,
like you break his arm, okay, and then you're gonna go out there, and I understand like it's his brother, but they have so much animosity towards each other anyway
yeah,
that that's where they should have got it out, where he should have just started wailing on him,
yeah. I
and that
just
would have made it even better because
mm-hmm.
then you would understand like you could have showed it from both characters' perspective, you know,
Yeah, it's
instead
funny.
of
It's
just
like
having that fight. It was like
yeah.
just again lackluster to me.
It is. I agree, and it's interesting because you had two different build-ups for essentially two different characters to the end of this movie, that both of them are like champion level build-ups. I guess right. You have Joel Edgerton overcoming the odds, the cliche of Tom Hardy, the undefeatable monster. But when they came at the end, number one, like you said, it didn't. I wasn't. It wasn't long enough for me. I didn't. I wasn't really. The fight wasn't where I wanted it to be, and the investment just didn't make much sense to me at that point. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
just
I agree.
wasn't good. It wasn't what I wanted.
And
Like I
then the
said.
cliche of the dad wasn't in his corner or
Oh
whatever, and
God,
then he
yeah.
comes down at the end, or he's standing up there
Yeah, that end
watching.
was interesting too. What did you feel about? So the end is Tom Hardy Joel Edgerton fight. Joel Edgerton beats Tom Hardy, and he just picks him up and he walks him out of the ring, and they're finally together. He's holding his brother up. I love you, brother. I love you, brother. And then you have Nick Nolte. You have Nick Nolte just standing there, just like nodding his head as they walk off, holding each other. Like, okay.
It's like they're still not gonna talk to you. I don't know.
I kind of feel bad for Nick Nolte. I'm like, all right, well, I guess.
Well, now you're really alone.
I
Sorry.
guess I would have
Like,
wanted. I guess I would have wanted some kind of like acceptance of Nick Nolte at the end of that movie. Would have been nice. You know what I mean? I just felt it was like, oh, they got each other. They'll be fine. They don't need me.
Yeah.
All right, I guess.
I can go die in the bushes or
Pretty
something.
much. I don't know. That was kind of depressing, right? I don't know. I don't know if that ending wasn't that great either. But overall, I think the biggest sin against this movie, it doesn't offer anything new. It's not game changing. You've seen it all before. You know, I mean, if you like seeing Tom Hardy just punch a guy once in the face and walk away, then you'll probably be relatively entertained, you know, action wise. Not to say that the action's not good. I think the MMA action's pretty well done. It's just the story, the two MMA like fight wise stories they were trying to tell, just didn't mesh together for me at the end. The brother versus brother thing was fine, but the style in which you tried to tell the story just didn't work for me overall. But I think we're at that point where we're gonna give our final scores. I'm gonna give Warrior a C plus. It's overall, I think, just pretty average. It's almost above average. It tried to get there. I think the cliches just hold it down. You got some great performances, though. I can't take that away from it. The performances I really did enjoy. But, again, I think the story was just too uninspired for me. And some of those logical issues I had with superpower Tom Hardy and, again, it's cool in concept and execution. I would think we have another conversation to be had there. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with. John, where do you stand with this movie?
I stand firmly with a B for this movie. I thought it had enough action to keep you into the movie and enough story around it to make you kind of care about the characters and such. I definitely give it the B's. Also, with that, just the ending and everything, the way it ended was kind of a disappointment for me. So I feel like that's. But I'd watch it again.
Right.
But it's not one of like the best I've seen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
that's why I think it's over a C plus or C.
Okay. Yeah,
I just feel like it's
for
in
me,
a different tier for me.
Yeah, for me, it's not. I think this is a chance for MMA. There's plenty of time left. There's always time. MMA can come back strong with a better movie. This was a great attempt out of the bunch. It just wasn't anything that special, I would argue. All right, John. So where can the people find us at home?
You can find us on YouTube at TheReelMovieGuys on YouTube. You can like our channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when we put video content out. You can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at TheReelMovieGuy. Tweet at us, let us know your opinion of this movie and other things that we do or other things that we retweet and stuff. And you can also find us on many podcasting platforms such as...
Yes, for your listening pleasure, we are available in podcast form at iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Overcast, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to give us a listen at any of those fine places. If you already are right now, hey, we greatly appreciate it. Just search Real Movie Guys. We should pop right up. Thank you all again for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy over there, he's John. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Thanks again for joining us for our Real Sports series. Play the games, watch the movies. Catch you next time.
See ya!